Hello and welcome to episode number 83 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk all about the hobby that makes us happy, tabletop gaming. I'm one of your host, Dan.
And I'm Jim, and today we're talking with some pretty cool friends of ours, Aislyn and Aaron.
All right, this episode this is kind of one in the making. We first met Aislyn and Aaron at GenCon 2021, and dude, ever since that meeting and learning about this game,
We talked to them a lot that day.
oh yeah, we did.
All those days.
We did. Now, before we get into it, we need to talk about our sponsor, Amazon Audible. If you head over to our affiliate link, audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness, you can follow that affiliate link. You sign up for your free 30-day trial of Amazon's Audible service. Amazon Audible is an audiobook service. When you sign up for that free 30-day trial, you get one free book added to your account. That's right, one free audiobook. You get to keep it forever, even if you don't like the service. So if you cancel before that 30-day period is over, you get to keep that free audiobook on your account. And what's better, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you get 2 free books added to your account. So again, follow that affiliate link, sign up for that free trial. If you don't like the service, you can cancel before the end of that 30 days. But I think you'll kind of like it because, again, you know, you need to go check out Gary V's books. I know I'm never going to stop talking about Gary V.
He's great.
He is fantastic. I want to say he's my mentor, but he's really not, but he kind of is because he really feels like it. Yeah. So definitely go check out Gary V's books as 100%. Go check those out. Check them out right now. Go. Sign up for that free trial. Get one of his books. Do it right now. Again, if you head www.audibletrial.com/hobbies and happiness, sign up for your free 30 trial. Link down in the description. All right. So this was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. Like we mentioned, we first met Aislyn and Aaron, GenCon 2021. We found out about their card game, Ivion. Jim was the one who first noticed it.
Yeah.
And he pulled me over. He's like, dude, bro, we got to check this out. I didn't believe him. I was like, okay, all right. And then when I sat down and figured it out, dude, this game is fun. This game is a lot of fun. So Ivion, it's essentially an expandable card game in a box. Okay, they're working on season 2 right now with different characters. It's one of those games that's kind of difficult to explain, but it's basically a card game with a board. Now, you first thought of an MMO, right?
Yeah, that was my first initial thought, because you have these 2 little characters that you have a deck based around, and you're able to move them around in a 4x4 grid. I believe it's 4x4. And so you're moving your characters around like this is a little arena. And in a lot of MMOs that I play, PvP is kind of a big thing. So when you're fighting someone, you know, you can run away from them and utilize the range that you have if you're a caster versus a melee character. And so when you have this 4x4 grid, you kind of have this room to do exactly that.
Yeah. So Ivion is the game. The company is Luminary Games, and both Aislyn and Aaron. Aislyn was the one who came up with the idea, and then their story is pretty fantastic. You know what?
Wow.
We're gonna let them tell it. So here it is. Let's get right into it for you guys. All right, today on the podcast, we are joined by Aislyn Hall and Aaron Shaw, co-founders of Luminary Games and co-designers of the game Ivion. Aislyn and Aaron, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing great.
And I'm doing quite well as well.
Awesome. So, before we get going here, Jim and I, we met these two at GenCon 2021, and that was when we were first introduced to the game Ivion. And Jim was very excited. In fact, Jim was the one who called me over and said we had to check out this game. But you know, we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, we want to talk about, guys, can you kind of tell us your backstory in the space, kind of how you came to be in the industry, and kind of just a little bit of your history in the space. Aislyn, let's start with you.
Yeah. So the way that I came to be in the industry was basically just me deciding one day I'm going to make a card game. And then I just kept working on it every day until it was real. And now here I am in the industry.
That's awesome. Aaron, what about you, sir?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit it's a little bit more unconventional of a origin story. So I was browsing Tinder one day. And I see this profile, Aislyn Hall, and the only thing she has in her descriptor is, "I am working on a skill-based card game, which what I don't know
Amazing
what
how
that
that
means,
works,
but
huh?
I'm certainly intrigued. Yeah, and so I message her, hey, tell me about your card game. And this is the most extroverted thing I've done in the last decade. And I hear nothing for like 30 hours, just dead silence. I thought, well, that's what I get.
Who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting?
And yeah, I was talking to one of my roommates. They were saying, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get matched with, or I don't think she's gonna reply. And then I got a message from her right there in the conversation. I was like, oh, never mind. And we met up, and the first date went really well. And we, kept going steady. And eventually, like on the third date, I got press ganged into joining the development team.
Press gang. Yeah. It was a naval press gang. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever heard, nor will I ever hear a story like that again.
I didn't even know that existed.
well, it's funny. It's funny you say like the most extroverted thing that you've done. Because like, I mean, I remember when I started, playing tabletop, it's like, nobody, I couldn't tell you anybody who would, who would go out and do that. Cause we're all just like so introverted and like, nah, I'm good.
I think that's what did it for me is I thought, wait a minute, this is my chance. I saw the opportunity. A Tinder profile talking about one of my unique passions.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going for it.
Yeah, and I feel like looking back on like me doing that, it's pretty cringe, but here we are. It worked out.
well, hang on, Aislyn, what did you think when you saw that message and it was tell me about this card game? What went through your head? I'm curious.
I mean, a lot of guys would open with like things that weren't related to that at all. And it was something that I really cared about at the time. So I wanted to talk about it. So I was happy that he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was good.
Aislyn, I don't think I've actually ever asked you this.
Oh boy.
So okay, maybe we'll need to cut that. I don't know. But when I reached out and before we went on the date, how did I rank in the guys that you were talking to on Tinder?
Oh my God. You're asking me to go into like the deep memory vault here. This was a long time ago.
We are glued here.
Okay, I think like when I had first talked to you and I hadn't met you at all, I think you were like second. I don't think you were first.
Let's see how
I was second. Okay.
Yeah, I think you were second. I think there was another guy I was talking to who I was more interested in at the time.
Hence the 30-hour wait time. Okay.
That's how we got there.
Yeah,
Full circle.
Full circle,
guys. Now, before we continue, Jim has a very important question that we like to ask anyone who especially plays card games. Jim, take it away.
Because you guys have brought up that you play Magic, and I would like to know your favorite colors because depending on the color, that kind of sets up the rest of the the vibe for the rest of the interview. So
the vibe.
Yes.
The vibe.
Aislyn, let's start with you. Yes.
For the rest of the interview.
Yep.
That's what we'll call it.
Yeah, the vibe. Okay. Well, for me, I would say my vibe is probably red.
I mean, that's good for you, not so great for me, but that's okay. I accept it.
Eat it, Dan.
I accept it. Yes.
Eat it.
Yes. Aaron, what about you, sir? Do you have a color combination?
So, no. So if I had to pick one, it would be mono black. I like being able to do anything.
Nice.
Okay.
And then just have to pay for it. Yeah.
Life's a resource until it hits zero.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. That's my favorite.
Yep.
If I had to pick two, I'd add blue in there. I'm one of those people.
Nice.
Okay. All
Some
right.
Grixis right here. I like it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly.
We got a little Grixis pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you both were mentioning that was this one of your first dates where you had brought over decks and you were playing some Magic, or was this just was this a few weeks into the relationship?
So it was after the first date went fairly well. We spent a lot of time talking about like Diablo and Civilization, XCOM, and all sorts of video games, and then we also started talking about some board games like Magic. She mentioned that she had a couple decks, so I thought, you know what? Let's have the second date be. I'll invite her over, and I'll have to make like some decks to go easy on her, and we'll play some Magic.
He's
had
like,
to
I'm playing in
transfer-
cons. I got fetches. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I decided the first game, I'll play my standard deck. We'll see what she's got. She mentioned she had a Boros Angels deck. So I had this mono white, like Death and Taxes style controls, really good at killing siege rhinos. Like that was its thing, because that's what you had to do if you wanted to be off meta in that standard. And then so I like play a 2-drop, I think it was like Relic Seeker, and she just snap lightning helixes it.
Oh my god! It's lightning
Helix.
I love the art for Lightning Helix. It's so cool.
It's
really
really
fun.
cool art. And
It's a
that's
good
when
card.
I learned that no matter how cool your standard deck is, it's not going to beat modern.
It dies to bolt.
Yeah. Yep. True.
Lightning bolt's too strong, guys.
It is.
What can I say?
It is. So, so I mentioned at the beginning of this that, you know, we first saw the game Ivion at GenCon 2021. And so I was roaming the convention floor. Jim was off doing his own thing for a little bit. I was looking at some art booths, or I can't remember what exactly I was doing. But when I finally caught up to Jim, he is at the Ivion booth, and I get up to him and he's like, dude, we got to check out this game. And Aislyn, I actually think were you talking to Aislyn about it? Okay.
Yeah, I think she was at the
that's
booth.
what I thought. So I stand
And
there.
Aaron was at the demo setup.
Yes.
area.
Yeah, he was at the demo. And so I started learning about it, and I'm like, dude, this looks freaking awesome. And so the more we learned about it, I'm like, this is actually really, really cool. And then we demoed it. I think we demoed it the next day.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't remember exactly.
Right. So Aislyn, I'm kind of curious. Where did the initial idea for Ivion come from? Because when I looked at it, what I saw Magic, but then I see a board, right? Which, again, very counterintuitive to Magic players, right? It's just cards. But now we're introducing like some miniatures and then a board space. So where did that initial idea for this game come from? Can you touch on that for us?
Yeah. So when I started working on Ivion, I had already been playing like MMOs for a really long time, most notably like World of Warcraft. And I enjoyed the arena PvP in that game a lot, where you would go in with like a group of 2 or 3 and then fight another group of 2 or 3. And it was characters, right? It was like warriors and mages and rogues, etc., all kind of duking it out in their own hero play style against each other. And I thought that was always really cool. I liked it a lot. And then I learned how to play Magic the Gathering a lot later, and I was blown away by like how versatile card games are, and like how each card can do its own thing, but then you can build them all into a unique deck that's yours and that's your play style. And I was like, is there a way to combine these things? And so I kind of wanted to create a card game that felt like a fast-paced hero duel. And those were like, I would say, the 2 main sugar and spice elements of Ivion.
Now, I feel like we have a very unique perspective here, and I think you guys kind of too, because we have the initial developer, initial designer, and then we have Aaron, who came along a little bit after the inception of that idea, and you know, who's fully on board with this. So, Aaron, when you learned about the vision and the idea of this game, like what were your initial takes? Like, what did you initially think when you saw Ivion?
So, yeah, so I'm thinking back to, I don't know, it was like date 3 or something. If we want, that's how I think about the.
If we want to put a
development.
time on it, it's date number 3. That's how we're gonna do it.
I never expected our relationship to become so publicized, Aaron.
You're just going through the files. Yeah, that one was date 3. Okay.
Yeah. So, my initial, the first thing I noticed when I played Ivion was the bones of it were actually not the board. In fact, in the very first iteration that I played, like the very first game, we didn't have a board. That wasn't part of the initial design. The first thing Aislyn was working on was concepting the concept of an action and power system. In Ivion, there are like 2 resources, actions and power, and the whole game is around balancing these to play your spells. Some things cost power, some things generate them. That's the general thing. But I remember I was playing a class that I don't think ended up making it into the final design, but thinking there's something here. Aislyn had found a way. What has essentially excited me is Aislyn had found a way to make varying costs of cards without making a mana system and without taking a external mana system like you would see in Hearthstone. And that was my first impression. There were a lot of horrible things though that we needed to fix. Like at the very beginning, you had a class and a specialization, and they were separate decks, and you drew 2 class cards and 1 specialization card, and it was dreadful. I think that was the first contribution the first bit of feedback I said is we need to take the class deck and the specialization deck and just shuffle them together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But those were my first impressions.
Okay, very cool. Excuse me. So what kind of and I think on its face, the answer to this question is kind of obvious from the board, because I think when I look at Ivion, the first thing that I think that is kind of out of place to me, a traditional card game player, like a traditional CCG is I see a board, right? But apart from the board, can you kind of touch on like what sets Ivion apart from other traditional and maybe even non-traditional card games like TCGs and CCGs? Because I feel like we're in a time now where we're starting to see a lot of evolution in the card game space to be a lot more than just traditional trading cards and collecting cards and the tables is all you need. Kind of what things set Ivion apart from other TCGs?
Do you want to take this one, Aislyn, or should I?
You can go for it. Do it.
All right. So there are like 3 primary things that outside of the board that I think really make Ivion what it is and make it exciting as a card game. So I think the first one, and we're just going to start with the one I think is the coolest, is our deck customization system. It allows us to be more liberal with power level of cards. So in Ivion, you can't just take any card from the history of the game and shuffle together a 45-card deck. You have to pick specific subsets. You have to pick 2 classes and a specialization. Each class that you pick has 20 cards. Each specialization has 10 cards. And you have to make a deck of 45 of these cards with playsets being 3 copies of each. So when you actually sit down to make your deck, you have to choose a subset of 50 Ivion cards to make your deck from, which means if we make a class with a really busted card, we completely missed the mark on the power level.
Black Lotus card in a class.
Yeah, if we make like a Black Lotus, that is constraint, because if the other cards in that class aren't overpowered, like you can only have that one. You can't just run every single overpowered card we've ever made, if that makes sense. So I think that's one of the things that is really exciting, and it kind of caps the power level, and it makes deck building quicker and easier. The other big pillar and thing that sets Ivion apart is it doesn't use creature summoning. And I love Magic. I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. I love all of those. I love creature-based combat. But one of the biggest things that separates Ivion is that in Ivion, you don't have that. The cards you play are actions your character is playing. And this is enhanced by being on a board, but fundamentally, it changes the way that the game feels. It's a lot more like Flesh and Blood, which is another new card game that's come out very similar.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And did I say 3? I'm trying to think if I don't know if I have a third off the top of my head.
I can give a third.
Go for it.
I think a much more like elevator pitchy kind of way to approach what sets Ivion apart too is that it's kind of like buying what you would expect out of a really high quality board game. You've got lots of nice components, you've got miniatures, you've got this cool board, got all these things, but it's also just an expandable card game on top of that. So if you're someone that appreciates really nice physical components, that's also something that Ivion can offer as well.
Yeah, it's like the game I see right behind you, Jim, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Dice Throne, right?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dice
Yeah,
Throne,
so Dice Throne was one of our biggest inspirations for like product design because their mix and match dueling, you get this gunslinger versus samurai, and you can play it all out of the box, but you can also combine it. That's awesome. So that was a huge inspiration for us.
Awesome.
Yeah, Dice Throne was a lot of fun. I mean, I was surprised. I remember when I picked that game up. At the time I had been seeing a ton of ads everywhere for Dice Throne.
God, yes.
And I remember I'm like, being a, I mean, I would classify myself as a card game player. I can't tell you why. It's just I enjoy games with cards for the most part. I like the tactilness of shuffling cards in my hand. So I just like card games, right? And so when I saw Dice Zone, that was Dice Zone for me was the first game where I saw them adding dice as another RNG factor. I'm like, oh boy, I don't know how. I mean, there's already RNG with the cards. I got to add more. But when I picked it up, I was pleasantly surprised. Dice Zone was a lot of fun. Yeah. So to hear that Dice Zone was kind of inspiration a little bit for you guys, kind of makes me happy a little bit. But it's funny. Like I remember. In fact, the first time we sat down and played this game at GenCon, Aaron you were demoing the game, and we're sitting down. I don't remember what card it was, but you were like, "Am I reading this right? Is this what this card does? The one that deals 13 damage or something?"
All right, so it was a card that was for the pyromancer, for the fire mage, right?
Wow.
And it was something where it was like if you look at the top 3 cards of your deck and you just like cast them or something along those lines.
Yeah, Apotheosis.
Yeah, that's
what
the
it
card.
was.
Yeah.
He dropped that card, and I'm like,
and then
what? That card does what?
Because I think it was you just play it for free.
It was something like that.
So you just play it for free, and then like I played another card that was just a ridiculous amount of damage, and he quotes, all right, this is Aaron. He's like, I've never seen a more explosive turn than what you've just done.
Oh,
we broke the game.
I think I know exactly what ended up happening there. That's God. Oh,
because I read it.
That matchup was so much fun.
I read the card.
It was not fun for me.
Dude, I read the card. I'm like, oh, this card's broken. And then he's like, yeah, and you get to do it next turn because it stays out on the field. I'm like, it's more broken than I thought it was an instant or something. It was just thrown to the graveyard.
Yeah.
No, it stayed there. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I conceded right after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you died. So
no, I conceded before I died, Jim.
Boom.
There's
no
a distinction.
Speed concede.
There is a distinction
okay? You lost.
there. I'm sorry. But that, I mean, honestly, guys, like that just tells you, like, for our first experience, that was our first experience for the game.
Yeah.
And like immediately, like that game just clicked for us, and it was a ton of fun. But one of the things that I had noticed initially, after looking at the game and the product, was one of the things that was kind of daunting to me at first was, and which is daunting to a lot of first time card game players, is deck building. Okay. And Aaron, you kind of just touched on it a little bit, from the breaking it down to class and specialization to, kind of minimizing your card pool a little bit. So Aislyn, was there a specific way you kind of approached the deck building process for the game? I was wondering if you could kind of touch on that aspect a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I really like to design from the top down. So I like to think about like how I want a mechanic to feel, or how I want a system to feel, and what I want it to evoke from like an emotional perspective, instead of like thinking about it mechanically and number crunching stuff. And so I loved the way, I mean, going back to like World of Warcraft or MMOs in general, I love the way that RPGs allow you to build your character. Where you like pick a class, and then maybe you have multiple subclasses based on that class that are more focused on certain things that class is doing. And so I really wanted to evoke that in deck building too, because I felt like deck building was a really excellent place to make you feel like you were building a character, because you can like pick your character's skills, and each card is a skill, and then like build this feeling of the kind of person you're playing, you know? So if you combine like a lightning class with a fire class, you can feel like you're throwing around both and you're like this electro firemancer, like an Is It player or something like that.
I'm down.
So yeah,
know
I
you.
really wanted to make it feel like each archetype was unique and like people could relate to each different class and the vibe that each class had, and so they could like separate those groups in their head and then like imagine what happens if I combine that pyromancer with that holy knight class. Like what kind of character does that make from a thematic perspective and from a mechanical perspective, or either or, depending on like what you care about in card games.
So one of the things that, you know, we see on a lot of the products is, you know, Ivion's, it's a hero crafting game. So is that kind of what you just described, was like that hero crafting aspect to it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Hero crafting is like a specific thing in Ivion where there are certain cards that are marked as hero crafted, and that's like a
Okay.
way easier way to build a deck in Ivion. So if you don't want to worry about like any specific, like if you don't want to worry about the nitty gritty of like, oh my God, like what cards am I going to put into my deck? Is my deck like resource balanced appropriately? Does it have blah? Does it have Y? Does it have Z? You know, like whatever.
I'll just
You
Google
can
it.
just be like, okay, I'm going to hero craft a character. What 3 archetypes sound fun? And then you just pick those, and then there are cards that are basically recommended. And then they're all
Gotcha.
designed to make sure that they play together well, no matter what 3 you pick.
So you could approach it from a, I want to build my character the way that I want to build my character, or you could go the route of I don't really want to get into that nitty gritty as much. What would be my best recommended path forward, essentially?
Absolutely. And that was like a really important thing to us for making Ivion, was we wanted there to be like basically stepping stones for how invested someone could get into it. So when you buy a box, there's just starter decks that you can just play, of course, to learn how to play the game. And then you can hero craft instead if you kind of want to like dip a toe into like what it means to build a deck, because then you have to make like a couple of choices, but not too many. And then it kind of builds itself. And then if you're like already an enfranchised Magic player or competitive card game player in general, or you want to, you know, dive in, you can just fully customize everything about what you're building in an Ivion character.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned in developing Ivion is it is true there's a lot of people who love deck building, and that is a huge draw. But there is a equally large part of the board game community that really isn't looking for that in how they play a game. They want a quick setup. They don't need to make it make it like a lifestyle game. They're looking for a quick way to play around and then go, put it back on the shelf. And so we ended up devising 2 distinct ways to make heroes in Ivion to accommodate both types of players.
So going off of that a little bit here, one thing that I've noticed kind of in the card game and the board game space in general is typically, and I think this gap is shrinking and these types of players are really intertwining more and more these days. But I think the way it used to be was you'd have your card game crowd over here, and that card game crowd, again, normally would be when we think of a traditional TCG or traditional CCG, right? You have those types of players over here, and those are the kinds of games they play. And then on the flip side of that coin, you had the board game community and board game players who I think what I've learned and what I've noticed is I think those types of players typically prefer a experience in a box, okay, where you have everything there and you don't want to worry too much about setup. You just want to have a fun time with your friends or your family, okay. And so but that other side, the card game people, is they get like heavily entrenched into a game. They live it, they breathe it, and then they're all about it. From the deck, from everything. So this game, Ivion, and again, I feel like they're starting to be in more and more games that are kind of threading the needle from the standpoint of kind of catering to both audiences here. Have you noticed? Have you noticed players kind of falling on either side of that? And there is that sense of I really don't know what word to put it to, but that there's just those different preferences per se.
Wow, that's a really good question, Daniel. And I think absolutely. We have absolutely noticed that there are very distinct like tiers of investment that people have in Ivion. And honestly, I don't know. I think I speak for both of us, Asa, when I say that we're more than happy to accommodate both styles. We've got a lot of
Yeah,
people
totally.
when we run our Kickstarters and we have our online shop who just pick up one game. Like there is about I don't have an exact percentage. Let's say there's about 20% that just pick up one box of two heroes and they're perfectly happy with that. And they'll probably pick up another box in our next Kickstarter. And then the other group is I want to go all in. They buy everything and they're fully invested, and we see a lot of repeat customers there. So yeah, there's definitely like there's a very clear divide, and there's not like I haven't seen much of a middle ground of I don't really know what that would look like, but
Yeah.
there's
Right.
definitely the dip the toe crowd and the I'm going all in group.
I mean, it's kind of like falling into a hole, right? You don't kind of fall into a hole. You fall into the hole.
Yeah. 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 I really think what I've looked at is, I spend admittedly probably too much time in looking at the words, right? Because we see card games and board games. And I sometimes I feel like it's a philosophical question. Well, what is a card game and what is a board game, right?
What is a game?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we just had a talk with Justin Gary. He designed Ascension, Stoneblade. He's the founder of Stoneblade Entertainment. Designed a lot of great games.
Yeah.
And, I had kind of posed that kind of question to him because one thing I've realized is at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what these things mean. I think what it comes down to is I'm trying to distill an experience down to a few words and try to explain that to somebody to give them an idea of the experience that they're about to get into.
Yeah.
And what I've just noticed is honestly, like, card games don't appeal to everybody, and that's totally fine. And when people think the word card game, they tend to think Magic, Pokemon. They think a traditional TCG or CCG. And then when someone says board game, that really is an experience in a box. And like traditional card games aren't necessarily experiences in a box. You have to get more into
You
it.
need to buy another booster box and hopefully have
Right.
better experiences
Right.
putting them together.
Right. And like where we started, okay, like where Hobbies and Happiness started was we're card game players. We love card games. And again, when I think most people think card games, it's a TCG and a CCG. But it's not that way anymore. And like Ivion is a perfect example of, yeah, it's a card game. It's also kind of a board game. And it hits like for us, it checks off all the right boxes, but it's like, well, what is it? It doesn't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's just, I think it appeals to more people, right? And I think that is kind of what's most important kind of at the end of the day. Yeah. So again, it's just a really, go ahead, Aaron. You look like you're about to say something.
Yeah. So I think you're completely right. And I think we've seen that barrier, I think, like you were saying, I think that we've seen that barrier slowly kind of get whittled away a little bit. And I think a lot of that has to do with not Final Fantasy, sorry, a different game. Fantasy Flight.
14?
Yeah, we just started playing Final Fantasy 15, but
right, hit me up. I'm a Lalafell. Hit me up.
I haven't taken the Fantasia dip into that, but I've been told it'll happen. So Fantasy Flight, with their LCG model, making both they make.
I did the same thing.
He's done the same thing.
When I talked about Fantasy Flight, I said Final Fantasy.
Right, it's so easy. But they make board games, they make miniatures games, and they also make LCGs. And that has really, I think, done a great job of merging and bringing people in. Like, for example, Arkham Horror, which we'll talk about later, but they have the board game Arkham Horror, and they then they make this Arkham Horror LCG, and hey, that's going to start bringing more people in. And because of Fantasy Flight doing that, I think they've made this nice little sweet spot for smaller developers to start making similar products. So I think another great example of that happening is Plaid Hat Games with Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Born.
Ashes.
So that right by the way,
it's over there somewhere.
Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Born is like indie game developer goals. Like, I think what we've seen is you don't have to strive to be like Magic the Gathering, to have packs in stores and have this whole thing. You can get by, you can make a card game and you can sell it in a box. And then people will buy that because they have confidence that it is a standalone experience. And as we've seen that kind of get cultivated, we've been, Ivion's been able to go in and flourish because of this style of game that we're seeing come out.
It didn't always used to be like that though. Like when do you think that started? Aaron, when did you first see that started? And then Aislyn, same thing to you. I kind of want to get your guys.
I think Aislyn and I might have the same theory. I'm curious what you would say, Aislyn, but I definitely have an answer when I think it started.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think it started with Netrunner. I really think when Fantasy Flight got the license from, is it Wizards, I think, to make Netrunner, then they, had a great run. That ended up being a moderately popular LCG. It kickstarted the LCG model, and it built from there. I don't know if there's anything before that, but then they made Legend of the Five Rings, and then the Lord of the Rings LCG.
Yeah,
they've got Game of Thrones. They've got
was that run of the first one
now? I don't know. It was the first one. I mean, they had a Star Wars one too.
Yeah.
Destiny.
Yeah. No. Well, they did have Star Wars Destiny, but there was also a Star Wars living card game. That was before Destiny.
I guess Destiny isn't the living card game, is it?
Destiny was a TCG.
Was a TCG. We have a lot of dice downstairs.
It pretty much was,
yeah, with dice in it.
With dice, yeah. So it all comes back to Richard Garfield.
Of course it does.
Well, it's crazy though, but it really is crazy. Like, you guys were talking about how, you both play Magic, and there's inspirations for Magic, in Ivion a little bit. But it's kind of crazy. It's almost like anywhere you look in the space, anyone who plays card games or is designing something even remotely similar to a trading card game, okay? You see Magic somewhere in their history, somewhere in the backstory. We just had an interview with Justin Gary, and like the reason he's where he's at is because of Magic. Yeah. it's crazy to me.
So I think of this in terms of, I'm a classically trained tubaist. I swear this is relevant. But when I started playing the tuba, my music instructor said, put your tuba away. We're going to learn piano. And I focused on piano for about a year because in order to learn music and have that good fundamental, you need to start on the piano. It's going to teach you everything you need to know. And I think similar to that, Magic the Gathering and understanding it inside and out is like the piano equivalent of board game design.
I love that analogy. Yeah. I love that analogy.
It's actually why the first question I ask in a demo, I don't know if I did it for you folks, but it's what I do now, is I ask, are either of you familiar with Magic the Gathering? Because that is the single most important question for informing how I should explain the game and where I should start.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
Pretty sure he did. Yep.
I had a question about the Ivion characters. Okay. So when Dan and I were going through all the boxes, I think we have 3?
Yeah, there's 3 of them
there. When we were going over the characters, I know that this is a lot based off of WoW Arena stuff. And for me in WoW, I love playing Warlock, I love playing Shadow Priest, and old school Unholy Death Knight. So all 3 of those have a lot of damage over time or dot effects So I don't know, is that something that could be in the works? Because I'd love it.
Oh God, should we tell him, Aislyn?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Is it good or bad?
It's coming, yeah. That stuff's coming.
Yeah.
Damage over time.
Is that in season 2 or is that coming later?
Later.
That is
Season two is not really going to be any dot stuff. It's later.
We currently are wrestling in design with one of our first dot classes and dot mechanics, and it's being a bit of a rascal trying to balance it.
I'm sure it is.
We're getting close, but it is tough because Ivion doesn't have creatures, it doesn't really have very much permanence. So
Right.
sorry, I'm going to go on a slight tirade here if that's all right.
Summon some demons. We're good. Put it out on the boards.
So in Magic, if you make a Grizzly Bears, it's a 2/2 for 2, and it represents potentially an indefinite amount of damage.
Right.
And so it alone threatens ending the game. In Ivion, most of the cards are in singular atomic instances of damage. And so it's like a competitive Ivion. A lot of it is like both sides are playing counter burn. They have counter spells, they got burn spells, and you are slinging it out. Introducing dot, suddenly there's this perpetual threat, and how do you fight that? How do you dissipate that? How do you make that not threaten and do more damage than your average one-shot card? And so that's just been really, really fun and challenging to balance. But we're pretty confident we've landed on something, or we're in the general vicinity of where we want to work with it.
Because I'm really excited to just put dots on Dan and just start kiting him. He's like, I can't catch you. You slowed me. Like, what's going on? I'm just dying over here.
I am not looking forward to that. Please, no.
Well, I'm sorry. You might as well
It's
not
coming,
fight
Dan.
it.
It's
Don't
coming.
even worry about it.
Okay, so one thing I want to ask. I mean, that's interesting. That does sound very, very interesting. Well, hang on, Aaron. You just mentioned competitive Ivion. Competitive Ivion. Is there a competitive Ivion scene?
So yes, there is a fairly active little Discord community of players. We do little leagues sometimes. We do tournaments, but there is definitely a competitive metagame that has been pretty solidly established, and people are always trying to break and overcome. There is one card so far that we're pretty sure just needs to be banned if a standard format comes out. But it's good.
What card is it?
Oh no!
The one that you killed me with.
The game. There's a trait called Strive for Glory
and I can tell you a little bit about it, and you'll probably be able to understand why. Oh yeah, that sounds like a card that would be overpowered.
What class? It
essentially says if you run out of cards, it's a trait, so it's a passive, and it says whenever you run out of cards in your hand, you draw a card. Essentially, and that ends up being
just telling us to machine gun right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
Play it.
The machine gun deck was discovered, and it is horrific. No. So we always knew, and we resigned that when we were designing the very first set. We were like, Aislyn, we've probably printed Black Lotus at this point, and we don't know it. And Aislyn, I think you said, "Yeah, oh well." And yeah, we found our Black Lotus.
Yeah. Don't tell them what spec it's best with, though. Give them a little bit of you guys gotta figure it out a little bit.
Why do I feel like it's on Google somewhere? A Discord group, a forum, it's out there. I'm
Hey
sure.
guys, guess what we just heard? Can you give us help with this?
This is spreading for sure.
There's only 6 classes to choose from, so how difficult is it going to be to find it?
Now, hang on. With the deck building, it is not a singleton format. It's not singleton, correct?
No.
Okay.
3 is a playset.
3 is a
Three
playset.
cards.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. the deck building from this game does it very much intrigues me. I'm very much intrigued. I really like the idea of coming at it from the aspect of design. You know, I'm building my RPG character. It's very, very, very cool. Now, one of the things, the resource system, when I was first learning it, I was completely thrown for a loop. I'm like, okay, you've got your resources thing, you got power, you've got initiative, you've got control. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
But so can you Aislyn, can you just kind of touch on the resource system and kind of where those ideas came from?
Sure. So when it comes to actions and power, which is the two different resources that your characters use to actually like play cards and use their abilities effectively. I guess that was probably most. I don't know. It's weird. It's a bit different from a lot of stuff, I would say. But I would say you could most liken it to something like Rogue from World of Warcraft.
I thought you were going to say that.
Where you're just passively generating energy. And then you use abilities that cost energy, which is one resource, but then generate combo points, which is like a secondary resource. And then there are abilities that care about combo points. So you're kind of like doing this flow where you're like, okay, I'm using my like weak abilities that are giving me the resource I need to use my strong abilities. And that's kind of how the entire game of Ivion works for like all those different characters. And then when it comes to control, I think that I just wanted to find a way to like distill any way that a character could be affected by magic or a debilitating weapon strike in any way from another character, and just like boil those down to these really base elements that you could assign pretty much any effect. So it's like you encase someone in ice, okay, they're slowed. You mess with their head, like use some like mind magic on them, maybe they're silenced, they can't like use their abilities as well anymore. And so it's all just about distilling what it means to be playing like a powerful fantasy hero into these core elements, and then using those building blocks to like create a system from all of that stuff.
Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about the control and kind of when you learned about kind of that, because like again, as a traditional card game player, like the idea of the control aspects seem a little counterintuitive.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a completely fair like first take on the control system. So Aislyn is a very like top down, brilliant design, top level stuff, and like flavorful. She's the best I've ever met at like bringing ideas to life and like class fantasy.
Thank you.
I am the numbers guy. I think about it from the bottom up. So when I think of control, I think about what it needs, what it's trying to do in the game. And so in Ivion's primary like skill testing, skill testing, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but the axis that it's testing you on is playing cards in a proper sequence and being able to optimize how, because every card feeds into playing other cards, because in order to play cards that cost power, you have to play cards that generate power, and you have a static amount of actions to work with, and being able to find the right line to do as much damage as you can in a turn, or saving resources to do a bigger turn in the future. That is the core challenge. And in order to like make that interactive, we needed to design a system that didn't prevent you from sequencing that didn't prevent you from playing cards, but restricted the sequences in which you can play them. And that's really the sweet spot we hit with control. Is it is very hard to stop somebody from spending all of their resources on their turn, but the way that control works in Ivion is it prevents you from playing certain cards in certain orders. It says, oh, in order to play this card, which is affected by silence, you have to play cards that aren't affected by silence to get rid of the silence on you. So we added control as a system to force you to play things in maybe less optimal orders. And it's a really subtle way of making players interact and stop each other. And it works brilliantly. It is, of course, though, like you mentioned, like the first concern of why would we introduce a mechanic that stops people from playing the game? And that is probably the biggest challenge for designing Ivion, is making sure that that doesn't happen. Or if you do try to make that deck, it's not as optimal as just more aggressive and less control heavy decks.
Aislyn, what was the initial feedback when people first started playing this game? And I'm curious if the feedback was different from traditional card game crowd, like traditional CCG crowd, versus the board game crowd. Was that initial feedback different, or did you kind of get the same feedback from across the board? And kind of what was that initial feedback?
I would say that the initial feedback was different from those two groups, if you want to think about it like that. I would say that people who were more like entrenched in competitive card gaming were generally more prepared to like think on that axis and like even to a degree like accept it, because I think that oftentimes we found that people who were less familiar with something like Magic the Gathering or whatever, they're not as used to such direct attacks, right? Because Ivion is one of the most like direct, in your face,
right?
You have to deal with this, and I made you have to deal with this,
right.
Which a lot of people don't like, and that's oftentimes not even what they're looking for in a board game, right? And so I would say that you know, some people see that and they see like a frustration. They're like, I don't want to deal with like not being able to play. I had these things in my hand and they're cool and I just want to use them because it's my turn. Whereas there are other people who, you know, they see that obstacle and they just smile, right? They're like, okay, cool. How are we going to get out of this? And how are we going to still do the best play we possibly can? Which is exciting and fun for them.
That was real Magic players. Yeah, understood.
Yeah. I mean,
those other ones, they just play green and they're like, why can't I play my stuff? Why you counterspell me? I know have dinosaur.
Yeah.
What is lightning bolt?
I mean, I think different people are just looking for different kinds of challenges and different kind of feels from their games. And so it's really important for us to balance that, like Aaron was saying, and figure out how to create scenarios and make control feel like something that is an obstacle, but make it feel like one that's overcomable in almost every circumstance. And it's just how you choose to and how effectively you overcome it.
And honestly, it always feels awesome when you're able to overcome that obstacle and then do the thing you want to do. Because again, like if I have all these options in my hand and I can just do them willy-nilly, yeah, that's cool. That's great. But like for me, and I think most strategy game players and strategically minded players who, you know, enjoy those types of experiences, if they're able to, if you present them with that problem or that obstacle, and then they overcome it, that feeling of just overcoming it and doing the same thing they would have done if that obstacle wasn't there is just so much greater. Like that's just the experience that I've typically had. If I'm able to work through a problem and then just, yes, I just hit you for 13 damage.
I give Dan a lot of problems in these games. He does. So he's learning how to get over them.
He does.
Yeah.
It helps a green player play around.
I absolutely think that good competitive interaction is a fundamental part about how I enjoy games and how a lot of people enjoy games. If that's not your speed, that's fine. It's just Ivion isn't that game. Ivion is built on that interaction, and that was just a concession we ultimately made when we designed the game. This isn't going to be for everybody, but for the people that it is for, they're going to love it.
Yeah. The season 2 box includes the Fox and the Forest, the Ram and the Raven, the Rune and the Rhyme. Aislyn, can you tell us a little bit about the characters here, and then kind of which one is your favorite?
We got a bard.
Oh no! Don't make me choose a favorite. Everyone always.
If you don't have one, that's okay.
She does.
Tell them warlock, and then that's it.
So season 2 is set in a frozen archipelago wasteland, effectively, unlike the first season, which is kind of set in this like Arthurian mystical land of plenty. And so there's going to be a lot of like Viking inspired characters, and there's going to be like ice sorcerers, and then these like terrifying forest spirits that protect their deep woods called wilders. It's way more brutal in terms of like the theme of the world that they exist in. And even like the kind of terrain that players are going to have to deal with in season 2 is more brutal. So in season 1, there's enchanted terrain, which is good. So when you move on to a tower with enchanted terrain, you're happy because you get power. It's great. Everyone wins. Well, you win. But in season 2, it's going to be difficult terrain. So it actually costs more resources to move through difficult terrain. So season 2 is much more kind of down in the mud, I guess you could say. They're not these like amazing high-flying Arthurian heroes that all slew the dragon and saved the princess and had a great time. It's people who are like, wow, my life sucks and you're making it even worse, so I'm going to kill you.
So they can slip on ice and like lose a full turn, right?
Maybe it's a card. Yeah.
There's a card called Thin Ice, and it is a counter. Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, going back to like talking about like breaking through obstacles, that's like kind of the way that counters in general work in Ivion. Is you can still do it if someone plays a counter against you. You just have to be able to spend a ton of resources to get past it.
Now, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite? Or no?
Right. Oh man.
I thought you forgot.
Yeah, right.
A favorite. Oh God.
I'm gonna judge you.
It's like telling mom to choose her favorite kid, right?
That's the way I feel every time. It makes me.
They love them both equally.
They love them all equally.
But
yes,
you for sure like one more.
You
than
definitely
the other.
have.
See,
well,
the thing
like I
Aislyn's
said,
not telling you is there's an ongoing meme in the Discord community that Aislyn has a very specific favorite.
Oh
yeah,
no.
and it's not even.
Which one?
Okay, fine. I'll say that it's my favorite. There's a specialization called survivalist. They have they have javelins, they have like slings, they have axes, they have like any tool you might need to like climb a mountain or kill or win the game.
I think go ahead. Sorry.
They're very well known for being very hard to counter because they have access to lots of instant speed interaction, and some would say infinite instant speed interaction, even though that's not true. People would just get salty.
I can't wait to play
they're pretty good. Yeah, I like them. The survivalists are really cool. I like them thematically. I think they're neat. They're so
what was the class?
scrappy.
Which one was it?
Survivalist.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna play that one.
Yeah. Aaron, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. So in games, I really pride myself in being like the quirky. Oh, look at how funny my deck is. I do all these crazy things. But then when it comes to playing and having a main, I pick the most vanilla class. Like in Super Smash Brothers, I love all sorts of quirky stuff, but my best character by far is Mario. Like about as bog standard vanilla as it gets. In this one, in Ivion, my favorite is Steward. His class fantasy is he's got a hammer and he's going to hit you with it. He is mono gray. He doesn't even have like a color to him. He is a dude with a hammer.
He's colorless.
His whole mechanic is his cards, a lot of his cards ignore control, and he does damage. That's about it. Right, and I love him. I love just hitting people with a hammer. And it's coming out. I'm very excited.
Nice. Very cool.
Out of all the characters, Dan, which one's your favorite?
I feel like I haven't played enough.
Out of the ones you have played and seen.
I like boy. So there's a witch in there somewhere that looks really cool. Like an archmage or something. It's a black.
Even the game
witch.
Designer's really confused right now. Like,
I was
what
looking.
are you talking
I was
about?
looking at some cards and I saw black, and then it said a witch in there. I'm like, it looked interesting. I was looking at their website today.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know where it's from, but it just looked kind of interesting. But what I will say, that I haven't played that one, and it looked cool. I did like the blue wizard.
Yeah, the wizard.
The one that I played. Yeah, the archmage. Yeah. That was fun. Yeah, I know.
The fire mage, guys.
I know, Jim.
It's thrown out
Jim.
there.
Okay.
The fire mage, keep burning stuff.
I know.
You know,
I get it.
There it is.
We get it.
That's the best one in the whole game.
Now, what does the future for Ivion look like?
Oh, more cards. I guess is probably
There
the
it is.
easiest way to say that.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
There will be more cards.
More cards.
So the future for Ivion is going to be for the foreseeable future. We're probably going to keep Ivion on Kickstarter. Maybe go to GameFound at some point, but keep doing. Our goal is to get yearly Ivion seasons released on Kickstarter as frequently as we can do it. One of the most common things we've been people have asked for is an all-in-one box. So instead of just having to buy every pack, we'll do like the Dice Throne season thing that they do, where it's all combined into one. That's one of the things we're working on. In a broader sense, we are working on international distribution. We've got some we got some stuff we're in the works for getting Ivion printed in other major languages for board games, so like German and the like. That's the side of things that we're working on. Not exactly like content, but that's what we've been doing a lot of work on.
I do have a question as well. I started dabbling with Warhammer stuff recently, and painting up minis is a thing I really like to do. So with out of the box, there's only one mini for each of the characters. But say I wanted to like change up, the caster. Say I wanted to make it arcane fire mage or turn it straight fire, and changing up the colors of the robes or however you want to build these characters. Is there any future setup to where right from the Kickstarter or from the website you're able to specifically buy the minis?
Oh, as paintable things? That would be that's a question of minimum order quantity. Is there enough interest for us to print a group? And that's a question for a survey someday.
Okay.
I can't say we've had some people paint the miniatures and they look nice. They're a lot better than my Warhammer minis that are not well painted. But they're painted, which is better than some can say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to offer that as an option for people. I know that there are people like you who love to do that, and I would love to provide that. I'd also love to, in the future, be able to make, I don't know, some kind of box you can buy for a spec that maybe gives you alternate art cards for them and maybe multiple different miniatures for them, so that you can try to make your character look more like the invoker that you always envisioned them as.
Great.
But that's definitely in the future. We're still focused mostly on making sure that the game is getting out at a regular pace and playing well.
So one of the things I really love about the game is the card art. And I feel like in card games in general, just the artwork on the cards just seems to, it's very predominant, right? And it just seems to be very important, right? For a lot of different aspects. But in Ivion in particular, I just found when I first found out about the game and I'm going through all the art, I was just blown away, and I love the art so much. And for me, like I said, I feel like the art is just so much more important when it comes to a card game than other types of games. Would you guys kind of agree with that? And kind of what was your standpoint on the direction of the artwork for Ivion?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with what you're saying. I think that the artwork for it is super important. And even though there's like so many different cards for each character, and it is a pretty big, like, it takes a long time to make all the artwork for Ivion, but I don't think that we could do it without it, because it matters just so much how like your character is represented whenever they're doing something, and it helps you envision like what's happening on the battlefield. And that's another thing that we think is really important in Ivion, is that like direct connection you have with your character, and how like we really want people whenever they play a game of Ivion to be able to be like, to envision what the battle looked like between their character and their opponent's character, and what the major milestones of that battle were, to feel cool. And the artwork is like so pivotal to that. So yeah.
Aaron, what about you, sir? You were looking very excited there.
Yeah. So Aislyn, for context, Aislyn does all of the art direction. She commissions and works with like an international team of like, I don't know, up to 10 artists at a time getting work for Ivion, and it's incredible. So from my perspective, I just am, doing playtesting, and then someday Aislyn goes, "Oh yeah, we've got the arts in for this." And one of the things that's so cool to see from that perspective is that, I mean, as much as I try to like think of the numbers behind it, my evaluation of cards will change based on that art. Like, I can't help it. Cards become more fun when the art comes in, and it's a night and day difference for some cards. Like some you don't even think about, like whatever, and then you see the art and you're like, oh, this card's kind of good, and then you play it. Art for the game is crucial to a game being fun. It's really cool to see the each season develop, and as the art fills in, I start feeling, oh yeah, this game's sick. Yeah. So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
I have a hot take kind of related to this topic.
Uh-oh.
I like Gloomhaven well enough, but it does really hurt my enjoyment that each skill card doesn't have art on it. I really, really wish it did. I really want to see what each of the characters is doing and what it means. Like, what do these words mean? Like, how is my character fighting these people?
Right.
I really want to see that on games like Gloomhaven, and I'm sad that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, when I look at Gloomhaven, I think there's not enough product quality here. I didn't get enough for my...
I didn't get enough in Gloomhaven.
Yeah, it's just a 25-pound box. Whatever.
Yeah, it's just a 25-pound paperweight. That's
true.
All this, guys.
True,
Yeah. All right. So before we move on to one of our favorite subjects here, I wanted to ask you, what games are both of you enjoying now? Whether that be tabletop, card game, video game. What kind of anything related? What are you playing? What are you enjoying right now? Aislyn, let's start with you.
Sure. So I love all kinds of games, really. We recently played a social deduction game with our friends when we were hanging out called Feed the Kraken. It's this ridiculous game where you are on a ship that is either going to a pirate haven or to the port with honest merchants and whatnot. And you don't know who the people are in your crew. Are they a pirate? Are they a merchant? You don't know. So everyone has a hidden role, and people are trying to steer the boat. So people get to take turns being captain. And the thing is, there are also cultists on board. Oh my God. They worship the evil Kraken in the middle of the ocean. And it's very possible that if you're not careful, the cultists can recruit more members to steer the ship into the Kraken and feed it with everyone inside. It was absolutely crazy. The theme was just hilarious. I loved it. I had a great time.
That sounds awesome. I think we need to check that out, Jim. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds a whole lot like Resistance, but it throws in that extra little element of the cultists, and you're just like, get everyone killed. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, what are you enjoying right now?
Yeah. So Aislyn and I have been doing a lot of games. Most recently, we started up Final Fantasy 14. We just are in the post A Realm Reborn story arc, so we're getting there.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
we have played a lot of Arkham Horror, and we have a regular Civilization 6 group and a regular Dungeons and Dragons group.
Nice.
So that's what we've been spending a lot of our time doing. And I'm trying to think of other. We recently got Dune Imperium, and we're playing a couple rounds of that.
Okay.
Big fan of that. My other love of card games is Dominion. I have a full set of Dominion. Love deck building games. So. Yeah, I've been really enjoying Imperium.
Cool. Yeah, I had to stop playing. I had to stop playing Civilization because I would lose way too much time. I played that in college, and it's like just one more turn. One more turn, and that turns over. I'll be getting 5 hours later.
5 hours later.
Yeah.
Oh, actually. Also, I've been losing way too much sleep to Slay the Spire, which I just now started playing.
Oh, nice.
Which is a digital card game.
That's acceptable.
Yeah,
that is acceptable. Now you are talking the digital deck builder, correct?
The digital deck builder. I am very excited to play the tabletop version when it comes out.
The board game. Yep.
Yeah,
that looks very interesting.
It looks very cool and huge. Like. It was like 700 something cards is what they said. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We're going to need a lot of Dragon Shields.
So Jim, I have something to tell you. I did not back that game. the one who backs a lot of Kickstarters, I decided to not back that one because I had too many.
Yeah, I get you, Dan. I get you.
So, all right. Well, with that, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to our favorite segment.
Yes.
And today's card of the week is brought to you by our guests, Aislyn and Aaron. So, Aislyn, please, can you take it away for us?
Sure. So, Delve Too Deep from Arkham Horror, the card game, which is an amazing game. And if you've never played it, you absolutely must play it because it's just the best thing ever. Aaron and I love it. What was that?
I said, or else. Play it or else.
Yeah.
We will find
one could say you could even delve too deep into it.
Yeah.
I would say.
But
yeah, so Delve Too Deep is such a cool card to me because it does not have an immediate benefit for you when you play it. In fact, it hurts your party. So Arkham Horror, the card game, is a cooperative card game where you are fighting against the mythos of the Arkham universe. So there's going to be all these like horrific monsters and different creepy things that happen to your people. And the way that that's represented is just by like enemy cards that are drawn from the mythos deck, and they're going to do bad stuff. And so what Delve Too Deep does is it forces everyone in your party to draw an extra enemy card, which sucks because drawing enemy cards can be really bad. And oftentimes you don't even know what you're going to draw. Like you haven't scryed to check what's going to happen. So it can just totally screw you over. So why the heck would you want to do that? That's awful.
That's literally what I thought when I saw the card.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. But Arkham Horror, the card game, is so cool because the way that you're playing over like usually an eight part campaign, and you get experience points throughout the missions from like defeating powerful enemies or successfully investigating like weird locations, and you use those experience points to make your deck better throughout that like pseudo legacy campaign you're doing with everyone. Usually it doesn't come from your own deck. Like you can't really earn experience from your own deck, but Delve Too Deep lets you earn experience and you put it into your deck, which accelerates everyone's game plan of like, how am I going to build into my best Arkham Horror character?
For context, you get points and experience at the end of the game based on how many points you have in the victory display. And so, as you can see, Delve Too Deep gives you victory 1, and that is pretty rare. I would say the average amount of experience you can get from a scenario, I mean, it varies, but 3 to 6 experience. So getting an extra victory by just playing a card is a pretty significant tempo swing in the overall length of the campaign, but it's a huge tempo hit to
Right.
specific scenario.
Yeah, and I love
And your deck thinning. Because you are deck thinning. It says you play it and then you
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in very subtle ways, it plays into that as well. Yes, but it's just so interesting to me because I love things about, like, I love cards and card games that, you know, you read the text and you can't like entirely understand what it means unless you play that game specifically.
Yeah.
Because it means that the designers like thought about, like, how does my game work, and how can we make really cool cards that do very specific things that work in my game. And I think that's awesome, and they nailed it with Delve Too Deep.
Absolutely. There's a really cool tension when you play it of first of all, when you level up your character in between scenarios, you can replace cards in your deck, including Delve Too Deep. So the question is, when do you take Delve Too Deep out? Because do you take it out after the first scenario, after you get one from it? I mean, it's done its job. Or do you keep it in? Because obviously you don't want it in the last scenario. It's not going to do anything at that point. So it's a really fun. It almost tells a story in and of itself, which is so cool to do with just a single card.
Well, it's funny you say tell a story, and I remember the first time I sat down and played Arkham Horror, which, by the way, the reason I bought that game was because it was called Arkham Horror: The Card Game. That's literally one of the reasons I bought it. Okay. And then I sit down, I play with my brother-in-law, right? So I sit down and, you know, we just do the pre-con decks just to, you know, get the experience down. So we sit down, I start reading the scenario. I'm getting into character. I'm like really getting into the storytelling aspect, which I think Arkham Horror nails. They 100% nailed it to it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so I just start reading it, and then my brother-in-law goes to me and he's like, "Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? Because I think you should." And it was just funny because he nailed it. Like I played D&D. We did that one shot, and I'm like, "Oh, that explains why you said that." It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Delve Too Deep is this week's card of the week. Thank you, Aislyn and Aaron, for that. This also just gets me excited. I'm like, do we need to sit down and play some Arkham Horror? We need to do like a campaign, start going with that, because it's such a great game, guys. You definitely need to check out Arkham Horror. But that was this week's card of the week. Thank you again. Now, Aislyn, can you tell everybody where can people find out more about Ivion if they want to kind of get involved and then find your guys' stuff on the internet?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a website called playivion.com, and Ivion is spelled Ivion. So yeah, the website's just playivion.com. On the website, you can find links to our Discord, which I would say is probably where people are most active if you want to like immediately get involved. People are super happy to answer questions you might have about the game there. They're even, down to play games in Tabletop Simulator, which Ivion is completely on. So you can play it there too for free if you want. We also have a link on our website to our most recent Kickstarter where you can pre-order season 2. And then beyond that, I would just say go to your local game store and see if you can find a copy or ask them to pick one up.
Awesome. And so don't worry about, guys, if you just make sure you check those links down in the description. We're going to be sure to leave all those links down there. So with that, we thank you guys so much for joining us today on the podcast. We had a lot of fun and hope to talk to you guys soon.
It was great to talk to you guys. Thank you for having us.
That was just a crazy story. Yeah. I did not realize that. I think Aaron said a little too much. Maybe, I don't know.
I loved when he was like, "Where did I place in the ranking of all the other people you were talking to?"
Oh, dude, that was hilarious. Aislyn was like, "Are we really getting into this right now?" I'm like, we are going there 100%.
Guys, first is the worst, second is the best, apparently.
Apparently,
out
yeah,
there.
yeah. So again, thank you, Aislyn and Aaron. That was a lot of fun. Again, we're having a lot of fun with these conversations, and guys, they are not stopping anytime soon. So, all right. Well, with that, Jim, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram at Jim Morgan HNH.
You guys can find me on Instagram at Daniel.G.Campbell, on Twitter _DG Campbell. Head over to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com. You can find links to all of our social platforms there, as well as our YouTube, where we've got all of our video content lives. That was a lot of fun. Looking forward to having more of these conversations. And that's all we got for you guys this week. Looking forward to next week's conversation. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Take care.